Ghost bears always persevere, no matter the adversity. We gain strength in unity, in patience, in wisdom, and in family. These founding principles made us the clan we are, and these bind us and make us the strongest. The past few years have proven the worth of our values and are the reward we reap for remaining faithful to the spirit of our founders. Few can match our might in battle, and fewer still can claim our success. As we enter a new era, our family continues to grow, but we must always persevere. Only the weak may grow complacent. It would be an understatement to say that the Rasalhague Dominion has had a rough go of it over the past year in the BattleTech timeline. While the events covered within the Dominion's divided sourcebook were tough to read and were even profoundly frustrating in some places, as a history guy I felt my attention being pulled toward earlier events in the timeline. Yes, this video is about the Rime Otter, but I also want to use it as an opportunity to touch upon some of the early history of the Rasalhague Dominion. These clan intersphere hybrid states are fascinating, and the Rasalhague Dominion could easily claim to be the most successful attempt at meshing two very different cultures, economic systems, and governmental structures. At least it was successful until Alaric showed up on the scene. So how did all of this get started? As it turns out, finding the answer to that question is a little bit more difficult than I first expected. Following the debacle on Tukayyid in 3052, Clan Ghostbear, like many of the other invading clans, faced an existential crisis. Khan Kabrinsky had expected the clans would easily crush the Comguard, and contingency plans for the loss were really unwritten. Having lost 2 full clusters of warriors on Tukayyid and now without direction, the Ghostbears needed a new plan to rebuild and reinforce their place in the Inner Sphere. Focusing inward, Clan Ghostbear began a series of economic and industrial development projects intended to make their foothold in the Inner Sphere impenetrable and profitable. The local citizenry was also empowered to take more control over everyday affairs, which gave the people of the former Rasalhague Republic more autonomy. By 3054, the efforts were starting to bear fruit. Industrial and economic output was up, and the clan even began limited trade efforts with planets outside of their occupation zone. However, there was still a glaring and persistent drag on the clan's effort to move forward. The fact that the clan was now split between their holdings in the Inner Sphere and the clan homeworlds introduced a litany of issues which threatened to bog down everything. Ghostbears on their homeworlds were increasingly left out of the benefits generated by development in the occupation zone. This inequity was a source of great resentment, and after weighing the options, Khan Bjorn Jorgensen presented the warrior caste of Clan Ghostbear a plan to move the entire clan to the Inner Sphere. It was put to a vote, though the results of that vote and the preparations for moving the clan's considerable resources and population had to be carried out in secret. News of the decision would have been seen as a sign of weakness by other clans who would seek to prey upon Ghostbear assets and trials, so the more that could be moved before the news leaked out, the better. When Khan Jorgensen addressed the Clan Grand Council in April of 3060, he informed the other Khans not that the Clan Ghostbear intended to move, but instead that they had already moved. Much to their surprise, the entire effort had been accomplished without any of the other clans discovering the plan. We of Clan Ghostbear have won many worlds from the Draconis Combine in the Free Rasalhague Republic through legitimate trials of possession. In return, we have administered these worlds fairly and instructed their peoples in the way of the clans. While our neighbors continue to skirmish for centimeters of land, we have cemented our position. As a result, losses to raids and civil disorder have been minimal, and our clan has prospered. I stand before you today to announce that Clan Ghostbear has moved from the blighted tundras of the Kerensky cluster to the blessed pastures of the Inner Sphere, to the Ghostbear Dominion, 39 worlds claimed by rightful conquest. This area will henceforth be considered clan territory, administered from the new Ghostbear capital on Alshane. I urge the Grand Council and the Houses of the Inner Sphere to recognize our claim peacefully to the mutual benefit of all. Challenges to this claim will be dealt with harshly until none remain to raise a dissenting voice. There was an attempt to abjure the Ghostbears, but the move lacked support. By the time the Homeworld clans started to investigate the Enclave's factories and settlements, everything that was worth packing into a dropship was already gone. The future of Clan Ghostbear would be forged in the Inner Sphere. As a Jade Falcon, I'm curious how much this move by the Ghost Bears impacted the thinking of the clans remaining among the homeworlds. It had to have crossed the minds of the Steel Vipers that if the Ghost Bears were facing tough supply issues and internal strife due to being spread across too great a distance, then the same could be said for the Jade Falcons. I don't want to get too far out into the weeds here, but it's worth pondering as the Wars of Reaving were on the horizon following the departure of the Ghost Bears. Settling in across the Innersphere-held worlds, the influx of resources and people led to significant changes. Local populations of former Rasalhague and Combine citizenry were now facing the reality that control over the world was likely not going to be temporary. That, and the Ghost Bears would likely prove a much more intractable foe than the Kharitans ever were. Could history repeat itself? Could we see an independent Rasalhague rise once again from the shadow of oppression? Frankly, no. With the Kharitans, they could pack up and leave when it became too costly to hold on to Rasalhague. But since the Bears moved into the Innersphere wholesale back in the 60s, they've got nowhere else to go. They're here to stay. Now, with that being said, it's not a contentious claim that for the average person it was far more preferable to live under the banner of the Ghost Bear Dominion than under the Falcon or the Wolf. Though many Rasalhagians still clung to their identity and would continue to for many decades, some begrudging respect was to form with the Bears who tended to treat the locals with honesty and respect. The 3060s and 3070s were tough but rewarding years as the Ghost Bear Dominion faced the challenges of integrating three very different cultures, rebuilding their industrial base, and facing down the Word of Blake during the Kerfuffle. In general, public opinion on Bear-held worlds continued to trend in the positive direction for the clan's efforts. There was even discussion of annexation of the remaining 7 Rasalhague planets that were still under the protectorship of Comstar. When the move for annexation moved forward, there were protests and mild resistance on those planets, as well as rumbling from the other Ghost Bear Dominion worlds. How much of this was genuine discontent and how much of it was astroturfed by cells of Word of Blake operatives is open to speculation and likely lost to the sands of time. Union with the Ghost Bears offers the promise of mutual respect in our governance, that Rasalhague can still be Rasalhague, an equal partner in our future. One of the more problematic groups during the annexation process involved the fate of the Kungzam. Unwilling to simply grant warrior status to all of the soldiers, the Khan offered the system of trials to each individual to prove their worth and ability. Many Kungzam balked at the idea of the trials and refused to participate. When they were dismissed from their positions in a military which was being dissolved, some of those disaffected soldiers found homes in extremist anti-clan movements. All of this was happening as the Word of Blake was unleashing their wrath on the entirety of the Innersphere. This explained the delay for the Ghost Bears' involvement in fighting back against the Blakeists. The participation of the Ghost Bear Dominion in the fight against the Word of Blake is a topic worth delving into another time, but for the purposes of our story today, I think it's best summarized with the following quote. Starting with Luthien and Pesht, the Bears have attacked Word forces mercilessly. Where the Bears have been, all Blakeist presence is exterminated. Following the eradication of the Word of Blake, the Ghost Bear Dominion Tumen was larger than it was at the beginning of the conflict thanks to the absorption of the Kungzam. This placed the Bears in a uniquely strong position among the powers in the region. When the fledgling Republic of the Sphere requested aid, the Bears loaned 4 galaxies of warriors to protect Devlin Stone's grand experiment. In the calm following the storm, the Ghost Bear Dominion was poised to play an important role in the politics of the Innersphere. In my research, I was frustrated by the lack of first-hand information on the following decades, leading up to the transition from the Ghost Bear Dominion to the Rasalhague Dominion. Sources are fleeting, and several simply state a single sentence on the topic. In the Wars of the Republic, a timeline states that on February 16th, 3103, the Rasalhague Dominion blends civilian and military government and elects its first prince, Sakon Ragnar Magnusson. Much of what I've been able to find on the merger between the two societies is from the perspective of those riding way down the line, sometimes 30 or 40 years after the fact. This provides an interesting perspective as the commentary usually contains the advantage of 2020 hindsight. In an account by Galaxy Commander Isis Becker, he wrote, "At first the clan tried to force their ways on the people of their occupation zone, but these efforts went badly and eventually were abandoned. Instead, the Ghost Bears decided to hold themselves separate from and above the society of native freeborns. Most clansmen, especially those of the warrior and scientist castes, lived in clan enclaves, relatively isolated from the freeborn societies around them. But the walls they built were imaginary, and those of the lower castes often crossed them. As many of the laborer caste lived outside the enclaves as within, freeborn practices crept into clan life. The use of contractions became more common, even accepted in some lower caste circles. Even among the warrior caste, clan slang fell out of use. This was especially true of the Raging Bears, who worked closely with spheroids and found it necessary to adapt their communication style. Still, vulgar language was the least of the transgressions that became increasingly common. Though the practice was repugnant in clan purists and was severely punished when discovered, some in the lower castes secretly intermarried with native freeborn, even to the point of maintaining homes and families separate from their genetically matched clan marriages. Even though the meshing of these proud societies was not without great issues, just read Trial by Chaos if you need more info on it, there was no going back for Clan Ghost Bear, and if concessions had to be made to prevent collapse of the clan, then so be it. Part of the process for revitalizing the Rasalhague Dominion was an overhaul of the technology used by the hybrid Tumen. Older battlemechs were phased out in favor of newer designs, which were a product of collaborative efforts between clan and Rasalhagian technicians. Today's main topic, the Rime Otter, is one of those battlemechs. Weighing in at 55 tons, the Rime Otter joined a rather infamous collection of medium Omni-Mechs that earned a reputation for decimating the foes of Clan Ghost Bear. Battlemechs like the Nova and Stormcrow were absolutely terrifying as part of a battle line star, a babysitter for lighter mechs, or even as fire support for heavy and assault stars. The designers at Jotun Battleworks wanted to create a mech that was speedy and that could add to the already impressive lineage of clan medium battlemechs by still packing an impressive punch. Built around an RUFM XL275 fusion engine and a Type 56 55C modified reinforced frame, it's immediately clear that the Rime Otter was intended to be speedy yet tough. For those foggy on reinforced internal structure, it takes 2 points of damage to mark off 1 point on the record sheet, and there's a -1 to all critical hit rolls on an internal location. Of course, the cost of this benefit is that the frame is much heavier. In the case of the Rime Otter, it's 11 tons of the total mass of the mech. The movement profile is 580, and it was improved to 510 in short bursts with the hardpoint installation of mask in the left torso. This helped the Rime Otter be where it needed to be on the battlefield at the right moment to take advantage of opportunities and to keep up with lighter mechs in the field. 9.5 tons of ice sheet ferrofibrous were added to keep the mech all warm and cozy. This was a half-ton more than the Vapor Eagle and a half-ton less than the Stormcrow. Once they added the Garrett T10B communications and the GC Heimdallr targeting and tracking system, that left 18.5 tons of pod space for weapons and equipment. Now you might be thinking, Mechfrog, that's significantly less than the Stormcrow's 23 tons of pod space. What is this abomination and slight against Kerensky's name? In response, I would say, calm down and perhaps consider a decaf blend after 9 a.m. Remember, the price of the reinforced internal structure and the mask system had to be paid for somewhere. The bill always comes due. At least it's still more than the Nova's 16 tons of pod space, so that's something. Production of the Rime Otter started in 3146, and it was distributed across the Dominion Tumen. The reception was cool at first with the traditionalists who resisted change, but the younger mech warriors saw the speed and strength of the Rime Otter as a unique opportunity to demonstrate their skill. After all, winning isn't just about bringing the biggest guns out onto the battlefield, right? Reports from the field cheered the improved sensor package and applauded the mech's rugged construction. However, techs reported consistent issues with maintaining the mech. It remains to be seen if these issues could be sorted out in future production runs of the Rime Otter. The primary configuration fielded the tried-and-true clan large pulse laser in both the right and left arms. This 1-2 punch of accurate pulse laser fire could ruin the day of many battlemechs, and not just the little guys. An LRM-10, aided by an Artemis 5 fire control system in the right torso, backed up the lasers at all ranges. The 1 ton of ammunition was placed into the right torso along with the launcher and a case too. Finally, an 11th double heatsink was added to the left torso. An Alpha Strike while on the run left the Rime Otter Prime at 4+ into the red, which isn't bad at all. as you could lay off the LRM launcher the next turn and not go any hotter. As we're going to see with the other variants, the Rime Otter Prime is a very basic, no-nonsense build intended to be useful across most battlefield conditions. I'm quite fond of it as a way to introduce a player to reinforced internal structure without 5 other advanced tech options in the way. The Artemis 5 fire control system could technically count, but it's just a -1 to hit and a +3 on the cluster hits table, so there's not too much to wrangle there. The Rime Otter Alt Configuration A is our agile, long-range skirmisher of the bunch. Its primary weapons included an ER large laser in the left arm and an LRM-15 with Artemis 5 fire control system in the right arm. 2 tons of ammo were also stored in the arm along with it. A Streak SRM-6 in the left arm along with 1 ton of ammunition provided a nice punch in the short range. An additional heatsink was added to the right torso and, well, that's about it except for, 5 jump jets, which pushed the movement profile to 585. Not too shabby. The 11 double heatsinks keep the config A cool, though if you did alpha strike after leaping the full 5 hexes, the mech would end up at a +4, so not too bad. So just like with the primary configuration, holding off on just one weapon could help you stay at that +4. Most of the time it wouldn't be an issue as the Streak SRM-6 would only rarely be deployed, and likely after running low on LRM ammunition. If you want to run a Rime Otter and be a complete pain in the butt for your opponent, consider the Configuration A. If you want to run a wildcard build that can terrorize at close range, the alternate Configuration B may be the one for you. The most unhinged upgrade to the mech in the B configuration has to be a supercharger placed in the center torso. This pushed the movement profile up to a 513, which is only slightly less than terrifying. The mech's primary weapons include a pair of medium improved heavy lasers located in the right arm and an LB-10X autocannon placed into the left. Backing up those weapons up to 6 hexes and closer range are 2 arrays of 4 light machine guns. The LB-10X is novel and really quite useful, however those improved medium-heavy lasers are a bit of a pill, doing 10 damage out to 9 hexes at their longest range. For the configuration to be useful to you, you're going to want to be very close to your target. The light machine gun arrays are a nightmare for infantry, and I can respect that desire to turn them into meat confetti. Except for very select missions, I don't foresee taking the B configuration out to play very often though. Now if you're looking for something a little bit more tame and down to earth, you're going to be let down by the Rime Otter Alt Configuration C, which is Babytown Frolic Bonkers. The supercharger makes another appearance, keeping that movement profile at 510 or 513 depending upon how much you want to test fate with that mask. 5 jump jets add a glorious flying death machine mystique, and the right arm carries 6 ER medium lasers in a lopsided Nova situation because in the left arm the Rime Otter is given a hatchet. Yep, an otter with a hatchet. Welcome to the 32nd century where we give otters hatchets. We're through the looking glass, people. The C-config's 15 double heat sinks can handle firing the lasers on a run and will end up at a +2 heat, though those things could be warm if you're leaping the full 5 hexes. Of course, it's also easy with this build to just lay off one of the ER medium lasers and you're cool as a cucumber. Overall, the C configuration is wild for a clan battlemech. Maybe it's popular with the Rasalhague contingent of the Tumen. Our last official configuration is the D, and it's the closest we get to an Operation Sneaky Sneak version. The 8 improved jump jets push the movement profile to 588 without the mask enabled, which could make fans of leapy medium mechs very happy. The Rime Otter D sports a trio of ER medium lasers in the left arm and an SRM-6 in the right arm, but that is the extent of its offensive weaponry. The rest of the mass is devoted to a NARC missile beacon in the right arm, light target acquisition gear in that same arm, and a light active probe located in the center torso. The config D would be quite useful acting as a tough spotter that can take a few hits without being cratered. The 10 heat sinks are fine for this loadout, but you aren't likely running this configuration looking to put up big numbers. It's the mech that will facilitate a rain of fire support that will absolutely ruin someone's entire afternoon. No matter the configuration, the Rime Otter has been put to work in recent Rasalhague Dominion conflicts. Unfortunately, even the events described within the Dominion's divided sourcebook. When they were deployed within the 300th battle cluster on Genshorin, they proved their mettle by running interference for Mad Dog Mark IIIs, which were being hammered by elements of the 2nd Falcon Dragoons. The Rime Otters were true to their purpose and absorbed an impressive amount of incoming fire, while the Mad Dogs were able to fall back. It did cost several mechs in the process, but losing a Rime Otter was much preferable to an expensive Mad Dog Mark III. In a battle report from Silverzine, the Rime Otter, piloted by a 6th Ghost Bear regular Mechwarrior, was able to harass a raiding force of Crater Cobras for days, even though it took a pummeling from their concentrated fire. It taught a valuable lesson that if used efficiently, the Rime Otter can be an effective screener and gigantic pain for enemy commanders who need to put down mechs quickly. In one curious case of Rasalhagian wit, Star Captain Ivo Forrester was informed that he had been assigned to a brand new Rime Otter Config C. Galaxy Commander Tehembra thought that it was endlessly amusing to give a man with the surname Forrester a battle mech that carried a hatchet. Ivo was not as amused, especially when he received some flack from his star mates about it. Still, he did his duty and began to train on the Rime Otter. When the first Drakon invaded Kamlan in 3150, Forrester found himself locked into combat with a Wendigo that was sporting reflective armor. Annoyed with the inability of his pulse lasers to cut down the opponent, Forrester charged the Wendigo and disemboweled the battle mech with his mech's hatchet. Discovering a hidden talent, Forrester went on to knock out 2 more battle mechs with his hatchet before taking down a Kamakuri after leaping toward it on plumes of Jumjet plasma. Even though Ivo the Forrester still shares his dislike for the Rime Otter C with anyone who will listen, his rising kill count suggests that it's at least a marginally functional design. Now, before we wrap things up, I did take a crack at creating a totally unofficial and non-canon MF configuration, so let's tackle it real quick. Maintaining the movement profile of the primary configuration and keeping that 11th heatsink, my goal was to create a more missile-focused design. One large pulse laser was still placed into the left arm, and in the right, a medium pulse laser creates a slightly lopsided build. The star of the show is an advanced Tactical Missile 9 launcher located in the right torso, along with 3 tons of ammunition in Case 2. Finally, an ER medium laser was placed into the left arm to provide some additional punch once the ammunition bins run dry. The 11 double heatsinks can handle all except for the ER medium laser at a run and still end up at 0 heat. Tossing in the ER will net you a 5+, which isn't great. However, in the mid-range, the medium pulse laser could be sacrificed to take advantage of the ER medium laser's range, and it would just be +1 heat at the end of the turn. Overall, I think the Rime Otter MF configuration holds true for a mech that could be quite a pain at all ranges. At close range, a possible Alpha Strike of 46 isn't half bad. At the dawn of the IlClan era, the status of the Rasalhague Dominion as a major power player in the region has been tarnished by a brutal civil war. How quickly the hybrid state can recover, or if it ever really can recover, is still up for debate. I know I'm not the only one who read about the events described in Dominions Divided and felt like the Bears were done pretty dirty by Alaric and some rather suspect motivations. I understand the reasoning behind it, as it would have been difficult to justify how a major power with one of the largest and most powerful tumens in the Inner Sphere would just sit out of things following the IlClan trial on Terra. Orchestrating a civil war sure is convenient for taking the Dominion out of the picture. While it might be too early for many to declare their love for the Rime Otter, I am really warming to it. It has a hint of grizzly to its look, and I think that's pretty cool. While it may never be as popular or as beloved as the Stormcrow or Nova, I'd happily add a few Rime Otters to my shelf. Hopefully we can do that sooner rather than later once the factories are finished producing their latest SKU of urban mech models. On a spicy note, thank you for coming by today as we covered a cool battle mech and some history of the Rasalhague Dominion. If you thought the video was worthwhile, hitting the like and subscribe button does help with the happy brain chemicals and for the YouTube algorithm deciding to share the video with new people. For all those names on the screen right now, thank you for taking that extra step to directly support the channel. It keeps the nonsense flowing for a little bit longer. Until we meet again, take care and go make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.